today. Greetings, welcome to the Transforming Assessment webinar series. Today's session is the 5th of October already, 2022. The session is using individualized assessments to counter contract cheating, and our speakers today are Ulrich and Mano from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. So, Ulrich, you're going to begin?
You made the mistake.
Right, thank you, Matt. Kia ora, koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to our talk tonight. And I'm actually reporting on something that mostly Mano's done. So we kind of tend to drive each other and drive each other up the wall. So I'm the guy who kind of shakes things down and breaks things, and then Mano goes and fixes them and comes up with new ideas. And so this is so going back round about how long? 5 years, 6 years, and it all started with paper tests, and it sort of progressed onto assignments and then online stuff. But anyway, let's kind of start at the beginning for the whole thing. So basically, just as a quick reminder of the scale of the problem that we're facing. So going by international literature, nearly a third of a typical class will cheat if they're given the opportunity to do so. And we all know what they'll do. They'll copy from classmates. They'll go online for looking for solutions. And especially in the last few years, a lot of them have ended up on sites like Check to post their questions for literally peanuts, and then getting answers back typically within a few minutes. There's obviously attempts to gain other forms of unfair advantage. We've seen a few people actually trying to tell us in online exams that they had power outages and things like this, and then we look at the log and we find that they were continuously interacting with the system, or also the use of substitutes, especially in online exams, where people basically just log in, from somewhere else, or have somebody log in on their behalf and do it, and they outsource their entire assessment. So, and the list is long. So you've probably all seen those things. So here's one of the sort of bigger scandals from across the Tasman. This is again from across the water from us, up in Canada, and over elsewhere where media have picked this up. This is a German one that I came across, so you may have sort of noticed from my accent that I'm actually German originally. And this is interesting because it actually says that in the summer semester 2020, over 60% of students owned up to cheating on online exams. So this is not a small minority, but by anyone's standards. And again, this is one that's pointing at Australia, but basically it's an international problem. And of course, we shouldn't pretend that we're completely immune from it. So this is one thing that popped up last year on Radio New Zealand, and it was in many respects one of the sort of more gentle types of media reports that we've seen on this. So there's really a lot of things at stake reputationally and so on. So you'll probably recognize those logos. So a lot of us these days are using online learning systems. We haven't sort of really dabbled with Blackboard. So this is our first foray into Blackboard tonight, I think. But there's things like Moodle, for example, which we use with the Code Runner extension in our school. There's Canvas, which we'll be talking about tonight, and our university has invested big time into Inspera, especially for final exams, but it can also be used for tests and quizzes during the semester. And so these are the platforms that we're sort of kind of targeting with what we're talking about tonight. So to give you a bit of a background, how big the problem is in our neck of the woods. So basically, we have in the vicinity of an intake of, I think, about 600 students, every year who start in stage 1. So by the time that they come through to stage 3, there's typically about 400 and something plus left of them. And as you can see, even though we can't ever claim that we catch everybody who cheats, if we do have a look, we catch a significant percentage. And we often also find that we got lots of repeat offenders involved. In fact, in this 2021 case, when a lot of cheating was found out in examinations, our examinations office essentially said, well, we can't possibly prosecute every case, so we're going to send everybody a warning letter. And the warning letter was worded in such a way that most students basically said, oh, if this is all what we get, then we're going to continue doing the same thing, because there were basically no real sanction, no loss of marks, no penalties of any sorts. And so we caught a lot of them again this year. So also what we find is that getting colleagues to actually pay attention to the problem is very, very uneven. So in 2020, Mano, who was the sole academic integrity officer in the school at the time, went literally around and told everybody, I want you to have a really, really good look at your course. And a lot of, especially undergraduate stage 1 and stage 2 course supervisors reported back, and all of a sudden we found a lot of people, cheating there. Then the second semester of that year, we were also trying to get on top of what COVID had wrought, and only one course, which is Mano's course, actually reported any cases. Then it's picked up again a bit last year, especially in the second semester when we were all in home office and we were having a bit of time to look at things. But basically, this year in our ComSci 230 class, I did an in-depth investigation and using for the first time IP address records to see where students had logged in from. And that together with MOS and a few other tools, we actually found quite a few cases. And now we're actually penalizing students. So out of the 62, I think we've fully processed about 58 cases at this point, and they've all ended up with mark reductions.
Yeah, so our exams are actually remote exams, and we are not really
able to invigilate properly.
And there's no in-person exams either.
But you kind of know that something's afoot if the student sits the exam from both New Zealand and China, and the IP addresses tell you that, and then at that point it's usually just a referral to assessment services. Okay. So basically, it's often just a matter of looking as to where this might be. So what do we do there? Well, we use, to a certain extent, where we have logs available, we use things like temporal analysis. So for example, in that course that I just processed there recently, I looked at code runner logs, and I could literally see how students were modifying pre-made solutions by changing variable names in computer programs to obfuscate that this weren't actually their programs. Also, we've looked in the past, again, as I mentioned earlier on, we've looked at people, pretending that they had incidents during, during a quiz or during a test, and Canvas essentially telling us that they were not offline as they claimed, or they hadn't had a delayed start as they claimed. Then we do spatial analysis, obviously now looking at where IP addresses came from, did they come from different countries, for example, and, we're still trying to kind of figure out why on earth some of our students need 8 IP addresses. This is literally 8 devices to access an assessment system. So there's clearly some evidence of students obviously using multiple collaborators, multiple friends, multiple paid substitutes in order to tackle their exam questions. In terms of going after students who plagiarize in reports and that sort of thing, essays, we generally find that Google is our friend. Basically, if they can find a piece of text, then so can we. Then we use check harvesting. Mano is the expert on that in our school, so he basically has an account on Check and just looks at stuff that is coming through Check that could be from computer science, and tries to see whether our questions turn up here. And we'll explain in a moment why this is quite an important tool for us. And then in programming courses, we also use tools like MOS, and then when there's actual writing involved, we use Turnitin also. So those are all tools available, and generally when we look, we do tend to find, and generally we do tend to find a lot more than we can handle. Okay, So this is, for example, a question that popped up on check that came out of our school. Here's another one, slightly different version of the earlier one. This is one from one of our computer architecture courses that turned up on check, and this one, you know, here again, same course. This is a question that I originally designed. It was reused by a colleague a year or two later. It's actually an individualized question, and that popped up here. This one popped up. You know, basically, we've had entire exams uploaded to check literally within the first 30 minutes of an exam period. So I'm just seeing a question here. What is MOS? MOS is there's an answer here already. It's a measure of software similarity. It's a Stanford tool. So basically, with academic integrity, we really have sort of, you know, three processes. That's the prevention, the detection, and the prosecution.
For detection, I think we should really, especially for programming courses, MOS is a really wonderful tool.
Yeah, great tool.
It's free and it works on any programming language, no matter what.
Okay, so educating, as far as we're concerned, falls under prevention or as a possible branch under prosecution. Yeah, basically, so these are the sort of, you know, three kind of steps that you have there. Try and prevent it from happening in the first place. If it does happen, detect it. If you've detected it, then prosecute it. And prosecution could, you know, obviously have education, you know, as a potential outcome. Although we generally find that, at least with our students, that this doesn't work particularly well. They just do it again. Now, what we're specifically wanting to talk about tonight are individualized questions. And so the idea is that if you have a class with individualized questions, you can prevent collusion between students, especially when you're having timed assessments, because everybody is pretty much you know, too busy to look at their own questions, and they can't really help each other out, you know, on that front. They also help us, if they do turn up on check, they help us detect who is cheating, because we can generally then narrow down, you know, often, you know, just to a single student who was actually issued with this particular question and who posted it there. So we don't actually necessarily need check to collaborate with us on this, and they've become, you know, rather unwilling to collaborate in recent, you know, months. Yes, as I said, it's also becoming easy to prosecute, because if we can associate a question with an individual student and it turns up on check, then we can basically say, well, you know, this is very, you know, very obviously something that came from your login, and that you posted there, or that you had posted there on your behalf. And the other thing, you know, from an academic perspective is once you have a question individualized, you don't really have to dream up a new one every semester. You can reuse questions from past semesters, because the concepts that those questions test, they remain the same, but the actual answers, you know, do change a little bit, obviously. Okay, now goes with the territory that obviously not every type of question is suitable for individualization, but we'll give you a bit of an idea, hopefully, what sort of questions you can individualize, and, you know, maybe give you an idea as to how you might incorporate into your teaching. So this is, you know, another example of a question that ended up on check. So we've actually blanked a few things out with dots here, because it's a question that's still actively being used. And to give you a bit of an idea of what's happening here, so we're having this funny lord here, and the name here is actually a token by which we can search on check, or, you know, on other cheating websites that uniquely identifies this question. Nobody else uses that name, so this is not taken from a funny book. This is the name that Mano cooked up, I think. So, and then we basically found the student, and from the specific data that they were given, we could basically figure out who they were and invite them round to an interview. So this was actually from an assignment, not from you know, from a timed assessment. And interviewing the students was really interesting, because he denied everything, and in the end he admitted everything, because we just basically had overwhelming evidence against him.
And the other important thing is we didn't really have to talk to Chegg about it.
Yeah.
You know,
They weren't even involved except in terms of us noticing that the question was there. So again, looking at all those wonderful platforms. So I'm now gonna, collaborate a little bit with Mano here on showing you how to do a little question. So the question that we're gonna do is gonna be an individualized question, and the question will be, Prof A wants to know how many New Zealand dollars you can get for X Australian dollars at an exchange rate
So
of
those
1.1.
A and X, etc., can both be changed to some parameters. That's the idea. And the reason we want to have that Professor A is we can have some random names so that we can identify the questions easily.
Right. So when we put in random names, so for example, the professor could be Matt, or it could be Mano, or it could be Anne, or whatever. Hang on. That was not meant to be a lowercase here. And so this now becomes our first parameter here. So of course, then we want to sort of specify randomly how many Australian dollars we want to exchange here. So we put a random parameter in here, and we're going to give a minimum number here. And because this is going to, be challenging, it's meant to be somewhere between, say, 25 and 45 Australian dollars. Now, the important thing is, when you choose random parameters and questions like this, you want to make sure that all students have roughly an equally difficult task in front of them. So you wouldn't, for example, want to start this with single-digit figures and then go up into the triple digits if they're meant to do this without a calculator, for example. Right?
And you certainly don't want to start with a 0.
Right. So then at that point, we basically have all the parameters that we need, and now we need to basically compute what our answer will be. For that, we'll use an expression, and the expression will simply be the conversion. So in this case, we're going to use our second parameter, which we're going to call at 2, and we're going to multiply that with our exchange rate of 1.1. Right. So. And then we need to configure the actual answer for the question, and that's going to be a numerical one, and that answer is simply our expression, which is our third parameter here. So we're going to call that at 3, and we want to give it an error margin here because people might be computing this in different ways. So we're going to say, well, it should be accurate down to a cent. And then all we need to do is we need to actually parameterize the question stem here. So in order to put our Professor A, into a choice of Matt, Mano, or N, we're going to highlight it. We're putting a reference in here, and the reference is going to be to our first parameter. So that's going to be at 1. And there's a little bug here that puts an extra piece of space in here, but that you can always delete. And then we want to go and see, how many Australian dollars we've got. And again, we put a reference in here. And we're now referencing our second parameter. So that's the first parameter, second parameter here. So that's 2, and we're saving that. And then we're really ready to run. And in order to run this here, what we do is we scroll down and we preview. So previewing basically just compiles the question, puts it together, and generates one. And so in this particular case, it just populates one instance of the question, and so here we're basically getting Prof Mano wants to know how many New Zealand dollars you can get for 41 Australian dollars at an exchange rate of 1.1, and the true answer is 45.1, and it'll basically be pretty much within plus minus 1 cent. Okay, so
try to preview again.
So if we try to preview again, it goes away for a moment and comes back, and now has a totally different setup. So in this case, we just happen to pick Professor Mano again. Remember, there's only a choice of 1 and 3. If we try again, we might grab another professor finally. No, Mano seems to be very, very popular. It seems to be $41. Right. You're an incredibly popular guy, Mano. Okay, here we've got Professor Ann. So as you can see, this is true behavior of a random generator. Okay, so we can then actually go down here and export this to files like, for example, QTI files for upload into systems like Canvas or Inspera, or we can do another slightly different format for Moodle. So this is quite usable. So there's another little Easter egg down here.
Let's actually answer the questions. Yeah. Dividni is free. You can do it. You can go online and
just go to dividni.online. URLs up here, and once you see the slides, it'll actually be linked. In fact, I'm just going to paste that in here for a moment into the chat. So if you want to go for it, go for it. Okay.
So, and the other question is yes, we do actually set the parameters, and then once it's parameters are set, basically the system randomizes the questions, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can have as many questions as you want.
Right.
And you normally would want to have a large number of variations so that you get many different variants of the
right.
Yeah.
So there's also a little hidden Easter egg here. You see that little downward triangle. If you click on this, something happens in the background. And that allows us to go over to the Advanced tab. And the Advanced tab basically gives us C# templates. So for people who are a little bit more comfortable, programming in source code, you don't have to be a C# expert for this, but we'll demonstrate this again in a moment in a little video. So the other thing that we wanted to take you through here for a moment is MCQs, so multiple choice questions. So they use a slightly different.
The idea of the MCQ is that you want to provide as many correct options and as many incorrect options as possible for a, oh, that's the wrong place. Refresh. Wrong place. Refresh.
Refresh. Hang on. Yes, you're right.
Just refresh.
Okay. Control R, I think we need to.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we
yeah.
need to
So the idea is that we need to provide as many correct answers as well as many incorrect answers, and then the system picks up one correct answer and then well, in this particular case 4 incorrect answers, and then puts together a question. So the more correct answers and more incorrect answers we have, better the variation between the students will be. So here, okay, national capital, yeah.
So we want to have typically more than one correct option. Ideally, I mean, you can live with one, but if you have more than one, London, even better. Right. So if we had, say, for example, Wellington, and
London.
We're going to make the specific up here, right? And then we also want to add a few incorrect options. So we might want to add Auckland,
Bombay,
Bombay, and another incorrect option. Hang on, you're offending people here, Mano. You got to be careful. Okay. So, for example, we could have Sydney.
No, but that's sort of good one.
Okay, well, we'll always argue about things like this.
Yeah, it's not a good option mainly because we've got both Canberra and Sydney in the same question.
And as a nod to our Chinese student, Shanghai. Right. So again, you want to typically make these as large as possible. So for a standard multiple choice question, I think you need at least 3 incorrect options. So what we can do down here again is we can go down and we'll do a preview. And then this is for a standard truth question. So it basically just lists the pools for us. So it tells us, so these are the possible true answers. These are the possible false answers, right? And there's another way of this type of question. This time later, we'll play a little video where you'll see what this looks like if we export it to Canvas, for example. So another way to go is to tick for a multiple response question. In this case, you need at least 3 options in each of these, and what you'll get is a little lineup of 3 randomly chosen statements from those 2 pools, and the students basically have to figure out which one of those is true and which one of those is false. Okay. On that note, so this is how you use the simplified interface. So I'm just quickly going to click on this. So this is going to be taken over to the multiple choices in the advanced tab. So the advanced tab gives you a bunch of templates. So we're just going to go to the single response one here. No, hang on, this is the wrong one, isn't it? Which one was it? Multiple response one.
What do you want to show?
No, okay. This you wanted to show the other one. Okay, look,
Which
I realized little bug. Yeah.
No. You want to show what you've created now, right? This is the
Yes.
So then just click on this one.
Yep, but it's an
the advanced one, and it actually has got the question.
Oh, okay, right. We're already there. Okay, sorry. Yes. Okay. So, and as we're already on the advanced tab, now's the time to show you a little video, and this video basically takes you through the process of taking a question from this interface, all the way into C# files, out of the Dividni Online, and into a Windows environment where you can use the standalone version of Dividni, which again is free, and how you then produce a QTI file that you then import a bulk set of questions into
I'm just wondering,
Canvas.
shall we actually go through the rest of the slides and then do the video?
No, I think this is probably yeah. Okay,
Right.
so Matt, how are we going for time?
They're about halfway. It's exactly almost 6:30 Sydney time.
Okay,
So
we've got
we're
enough
halfway
time
on.
for the video. Yeah, good. Okay. So we're just going to put that on full screen.
I'm going to show you how to compose individualized questions from the template.
We don't have audio from the video.
Okay, we'll look at this in a moment. Just hang on a sec. How do we actually add system video?
Sorry, I actually don't know. But we can hear the sound now.
I might,
it's probably coming through your microphone.
microphone back on and I can hear it.
Yeah.
Mano, can we just restart this again?
So
We're going to go back to the whole thing, and we're just going to use the plain audio feed here. Okay, so I'm just going to put that on top, the microphone on top of my laptop here, and then hopefully it's going to work.
on this video, I'm going to show you how to compose
Can you hear it now?
questions from template, the advanced option.
Sorry, I went to the wrong.
So
So we can hear it. Sorry.
questions as C# files, and how to use those C# files together with a helper script to generate QTI files for import into Canvas, and how to set up a Canvas quiz with those individualized questions here. So let's get started. So what we do is we're going to go to dividni.online, and we're already here, obviously, and then we're going to click in the top right corner on Advanced. So under Advanced, you can pick a question template. There's 4 templates that you can choose from, and we're really only going to be using 2 here. The first one is the short text template, and when you choose this, you'll get a template down here. So this is a question that's basically already fully functional. It's called Bond's first name, and if you wanted to change that question, what you do is you change the name of something unique, and then you would want to change the ID down to whatever you named. The other thing you want to adapt is you want to basically make sure you set the correct number of marks. So this is going to be a whole number. So like 1.5 to 2.5 that are not allowed here. And then you want to set the questions. That's the actual question for your short answer questions. So remember, with short answer questions, the students get a little box to input their answer into, and typically this is meant to be just a very, very short string of characters of sorts. And what can happen in those short answer questions is that sometimes there's more than one valid correct answer, And so what you need to do is you need to add those correct options. So in this case, could be James, Jim, Jimmy, or whatever. And then this is really all you need to do for authoring. You could also use the random generator that's being passed in here. If you're a bit of a programming type, you could use that to even vary your stem or your answers. But that isn't actually always required. So in that sense, we're a non-individualized question here. But in this case, the student still has to work out the answer by themselves. There's no answer options given to them that they can see. So we then click on preview, and what you'll see happening here is that the question basically comes up and it shows us what all the possible true answers are. So this is just a quick proofread that we want to do. And then at that point, that question is ready for us to be processed. Processing happens in a notepad. So in order to do this, we'll bring up a notepad or text editor or whatever we want to use. And we actually just quickly put that aside. We go back to the template. And now we're going to basically just highlight all of our template text. We're going to copy that. And then we're going to paste this into our editor, and from the editor we're going to actually save the file to a location that I've already prepared here, the folder mock quiz in this directory here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give it the same name as for the question, so Bond's first name, and we're going to make this file not a text file but a C# source file. So Bond's first name.cs, here we go, that's all saved. Yeah, so once we've done that, we can go and just put this aside for a moment and come up with another question. So in this case, I'm going to take you straight to the multiple response MCQ or XYZ question type. And I'll show you here a few of the other nice features that Dividni Online has in terms of assisting you to produce correct questions. So basically the way that those XYZ questions work is that the students get three statements presented to them, X, Y, and Z, and each statement on its own can either be true or false. And then they have to identify which of those are true and which of those are false. And in order to individualize this, what we're doing is we're creating two pools of possible statements or answers or whatever. So here in this particular example, the national capitals is MCQ, question template. We basically are asking the students to identify which of the options X, Y, and Z are national capitals and which ones are not. So we're naming this national capitals MCQ, and again you see that the ID of the question corresponds to this one here. This is the recommended thing to do. And you see that here we're generating an XYZ question. So we then again define the question stem, basically just asking the question, which of the following cities are national capitals? And again, we want to have a mark that's a whole number, so 2 marks in this case. So then we define two pools, the pools of the correct options. So in this case, this would be London, Paris, Madrid, and so on. And we can easily, add to this. So, for example, we could, enter Canberra here, right? And oops, closing quote missing. And then we could also add incorrect. Now, what I was going to show you quickly is what happens when we preview this. So as we preview this, now in this case, we're having a correct question. What we're essentially getting is a list of the true answers and a list of the false answers. So again, we can just proofread to make sure that this is actually correct. But what I was going to show you is a feature that's going to be useful if you're going to be putting things in, where you're having maybe slightly longer options and where you're probably going to be copying things ever so often. And then it's very, very easy to get the same option in there twice. So for example, if we add London here again, and you'll see that we already have this at the top of the list, then let's quickly see what happens. So as we're trying to preview again, it'll give us a warning that the national capitals MCQ question had the correct answer option, London, already added. So this basically indicates to us that there's a problem here. What we could also do is basically just bring that down here to the incorrects list. And if we are trying the same dirty trick here, then again, it's going to complain in the same way. So we want to make sure that this is clean, obviously. And once we've done that, just one quick preview to make sure everything's correct. And so you can see it is. So what we can now do is we can basically go back to our template window. Again, highlight everything, copy, and go over to our notepad. Just save this again as a C# file. So there we go, and this is national capitals MCQ.cs, and of course we want to make that a C# source file, and saving that, and here we go for the second one. So what I want to show you now is this third question that we're going to be using. We're going to be using the same question again, but we're going to turn the XYZ question into a truth question. So we're going to turn this into a truth question. This is the only change we're going to make, apart from the fact that we now have no longer a unique ID. So we're going to just say this is going to be a single answer question. And again, we're going to change this over here. So you can call this anything. So the single answer is really just as a sort of memo to us. It just has to be a unique ID for the respective question. That's all we need. Okay, so again, we're going to go and highlight everything here. We're going to copy over, and we are going to be generating a new file, and we're going to save our file as national capitals single answer MCQ, and again we're going to make sure that this is the C# file. Right, so at that point we're actually ready to go. So now that we've got our C# files, it's time to generate the QTI zip file. And in order to do that, we're going to be putting the editor aside, which we're not going to need anymore. And we're going to bring over the directory for our window with our 3 C# files in it. And what I'm now going to do, sort of with a little bit of black magic, is I'm going to make a couple of extra files turn up. So the 2 new files that I've copied over are Canvas test.html. So this is a file that Canvas requires. It's just a normal HTML file with instructions for the students that the students get presented with when they start their quiz. And the QTI maker .ps1 Windows PowerShell script is a script that you can download from the dividni.com website. What we're going to do now is we're just going to bring up a Windows PowerShell. So let me just bring my prepared Windows PowerShell over here, which I've already moved to the directory. And the other thing is on my PowerShell setup, I have actually given my PowerShell the permission to run scripts. So this is a setting that you have to make when you want to run those PS1 scripts. So all I do now is I run the QTI maker script, and so that will ask me for a name for the QTI file. So I'm just going to call that mock quiz, and then it asks us what QTI version we would like to generate the QTI code for. And in this case, we want to go to Canvas, so we need QTI version 1.2, so it's option 1 here. And then basically all we need to specify is how many individualized versions of each question we want. So in this case, we're going to choose 10. However, just a quick remark here. Now, using 10 options is what you do for an extremely small class of, literally only maybe half a dozen students. So for larger classes, you could do 100 or 300 or 500 or 600 here. Dividni will generate whatever number of versions you want. And then all that's needed from our end now is to basically let Dividni do its magic and here it's doing its job, and you see this is a relatively quick job, and then we're done with this. And as we're moving the PowerShell away, what we'll basically see is that we've now come up with an extra file here, mockquiz.zip. So this is the QTI file, which we're now going to be using for upload to Canvas. So to demonstrate the upload of QTI files and the setup of quizzes in Canvas, I've put a little demo site together here. And if we go under its quizzes entry, we'll basically see that there's no quizzes currently in the course. So in order to change that, we're going to go down to settings. And under settings, we're going to go and choose import course content over on the right here. And as you can see, I've already previously imported the mock quiz here, and I've cleaned this out because, as usual, things don't always go quite right. Add a slide later on to basically show how to correct yourself when you're having that. So in this case, what we want to import is a QTI zip file, and the only thing we need to do now is to basically upload that QTI mock quiz file that we've generated, and all of the rest of things we can pretty much ignore, and then we're just going to do our import. And this will take a minute for larger zip files, QTI files. This can actually take a little while. So when you're importing a large quiz like this, you may as well go away and get yourself a tea or a coffee. And as you can see, in this case, it's all worked really, really quickly. So what we can do is we can go over to our quizzes. And what we now see is that there's actually 4 quizzes that have appeared. So 3 of those quizzes are our respective questions that all turn up in their different variants as a single quiz. And the other one that's turned up is our mock quiz, and that's the one that we're actually going to go and edit. So as you can see, this looks like any just standard classic Canvas quiz. And you can set up anything from timing and other rules and bits and pieces like this. So we're just going to stick with the defaults here. And we're going to move over to the questions. So when we look at the questions page here, what we'll see is that our blurb has already arrived up here. We can obviously edit this or something else like test instructions or quiz instructions or whatever. And take it from there. And so we're just going to update this. And then how do we get our individualized questions in? So we get various question groups. And it's fairly straightforward. So we'll just click on add question group here. And then we want to link this to a question bank. So for example, we might want to start with the natural capitals MCQ. And we want to select that bank by linking to a question bank, select that bank. And then we remember also that we wanted to have 2 points per question. So we're going to change that here. And then we just click on create group. And this now has basically added this question to the quiz. So if we then want to go and link to the single answer MCQs, then again, same thing. We're selecting the bank here, update the points per question, and create our group. And last but not least, we put our short answer in there. Again, we click on link to question bank and pick up Bond's first name as the question bank, select the bank and update the numbers here, say create group. And now, of course, what we want to do is we want to save the quiz. We could also publish it if we wanted to once all the proofread's correct. So, and then we'll just go to preview, have a quick look at that to see what all of this looks like. So here are the instructions that were in the Canvas test blurb file. Then we have our first question here with the capitals, and you can see these are the X, the Y, and the Z option. And the students then basically just choose from the scheme on here. In our question 2, we have the same question, but it's also a standard truth question. So basically tick one of those. And then in question 3, what is Bond's first name? We basically could enter something like Jimmy. Okay, so what we can now do is we can basically go back to our mock quiz, and we can do another preview. So you notice that the options have changed slightly. Okay, and this is really all there is to it. So happy question authoring with Dividni.
You want to carry on?
Thanks for sticking with us here throughout the video. We initially thought we might run this as a, okay, it's not letting me bring my video back on. Oh, hang on, we'll need to go back from this. Okay.
Oh, click.
Here we go. So you should be seeing that. No, unfortunately, it's not showing my own our own faces here, but so you just have to make do with us. Here we go. Yeah, no, it's just not letting us do that.
Oh,
so something with the browser not working. Okay,
so can you hear us? We can see your slides and we can hear you. That's good enough.
Okay, so if it's good enough, that's fine. So yeah, basically, there's a couple of things worth knowing about Dividni and Canvas. If you at some point find during the proofread that you've screwed up and the quiz happens to be already on there, you need to delete the quizzes and all of the question banks associated with the quizzes. So there's a little button that takes you to managing question banks, and there's an associated question bank for all of the quizzes with the same name as the question, and you need to delete those as well. And then you simply upload a fresh QTI file over the top of it, and that'll sort it all out. So the other thing is that I'm personally a great fan of including images in questions, and the way in which you do this is, if you're a little bit familiar with HTML programming, then you can include an image tag and link the source attribute of that image tag to an external site. Unfortunately, you're not, especially when you're having sort of multiple choice questions and that sort of thing, it's not easy to include an image on Canvas proper. And if you're wanting to dynamically create content, and this probably only really applies to people who are sort of, at the sort of cutting edge of programming, Canvas doesn't support embedded scalable vector graphics. So what you need to do there is basically, again, link to an external site that uses your SVG, and having done that. Okay. So if you wanted to use Inspera, this is a bit of a can of worms. It's possible, but there are some fairly serious constraints in terms of the number of questions and versions that you can use, and in terms of the fact that basically Dividni is not designed to handle questions in bulk in any case. And when we look at, for example, say a typical exam that we might have, a 2-hour exam with 45, questions, and in a large class with say 300 question versions each, you can basically figure out how many individual questions you would have to upload, and then on Inspera, for example, the limit of what you can upload is 900. And that's a bit of an issue if you're trying to get to that sort of scale. So there's a few compromises here that you have to make. If you would want to use it with Inspera, do talk to us, and we can sort of tell you exactly what you need to do. Right. Basically, should also quickly point out that we have, of course, in the past used this in paper exams. So in this case, what you use is use an HTML template that you can edit to accommodate your questions, and the students then, in their teleform or whatever they're using, having to enter a version code. So you can see that this is different between the different versions, and then as you kind of go, you'll find that the individual questions are also different. And you can see that Mano, who put this example together, is a great fan of Lord of the Rings. And so, for example, in the second question, there is actually one correct answer, but the correct answer is a character with different names, and so those different names are both used in that positive, correct answer pool. And down here in question number 3, for example, this is a little mathematics question in disguise with systems of linear equations involved. So this is what we used to do, and we found that one of the great advantages of doing this is that in the past, when we ran written tests and exams for large courses, we always had a problem that we would basically end up having to operate a large number of rooms, because we'd have to basically sit students, at least one row apart and at least, one seat apart. But when you're actually using Dividni, there is nothing to be gained from having your glance wandering over to your neighbor, because your neighbor will have completely different versions of the question. And so we've actually been able to literally sit people down cheek to jowl in our lecture theaters. And so this obviously means we don't need to book as many lecture theaters as we used to do in the past, which basically is a relief for the university as a whole, because we're now around the time of the middle of the semester. We're having problems with a number of lecture theaters being booked for evening mid-semester tests. And so if you only need one theater rather than 8 or 9, it's obviously a lot easier. And so it also means that we don't need to lean as much onto our colleagues to help us with an invigilation at night. And so again, it makes the whole organization of the whole thing easier. So yeah, just from a pedagogical point of view, basically our individualized questions let us mitigate cheating without being punitive. The students kind of know what they sign up for right from the word go. If we're using it in assignments, it actually allows student collaboration at a conceptual level. It's just that there's no point in them copying answers of each other, because the answers will be different. It's also relatively easy, if you want to give students questions to practice. You simply run off, a version of your, of your test or exam with Dividni, and convert it to a PDF and pass it on to them, and then they can work with it. And you can do this, 3, 4, 5, 10 times if you want. And again, from a sort of annual perspective, we can reuse questions again and again and again, because there's no point in memorizing the answers to last year's exam, because again, they'll be different this year around, right? So, and also because it deters students from cheating in the first place, it actually saves us precious time that we would otherwise spend on prosecution. And when we do prosecute, it makes the demonstration of the evidence a lot easier. So, and this really gets us to the end of our talk, and we're open for questions. So Mano's been actually manning the keyboard while I was talking, and while we had the video, I was using the keyboard from time to time. So a few questions have already turned up in the chat, but if there's further questions or you didn't get an answer, then please, I think now's the time.
I have one. So I did ask, yes, I understand it would work in Moodle in terms of Moodle accepts QTI, but are there any gotchas like you found with Canvas or the other thing, that testing software, that apply to Moodle as well? Or is it relatively easy?
No, we haven't used it a lot on Moodle, but then in the limited use, we haven't had any issues.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, the one issue that we have actually discovered with Moodle, and this is with CodeRunner under Moodle, is that it doesn't prevent students from logging in from multiple IP addresses simultaneously. So in our ComSci 230 exam in the first semester, we had students that were literally logged in from several countries at the same time. We had students that sat in our labs but simultaneously came from China. And
right.
And so with Inspira, apparently, at least I've been assured by our assessment services people that they have tested this, apparently there it's not possible. And with Moodle, it's really, really difficult to lock this down. You can apparently do it for Moodle, but not if you're using Moodle in conjunction with a single sign-on server, which is what we're doing. And so this essentially kind of opens door for bringing your entire family in. And in fact, we just recently dealt with a student who, when challenged about why they'd logged in from both China and New Zealand, they said, "Oh, the login from China was my dad who wanted to check on the progress of my exam." And so we're currently debating with our examinations people as to whether it's appropriate for family members to enter the exam room. because it's
A big no on that one.
electronically is. But yeah, problems like these exist with Canvas also. There's no limit on the number of places that you can log into your Canvas account from. And we've actually raised this with Instructure because we'd like to have that change. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you have students based in mainland China who might be using VPNs on and off? That's the other
In some of our courses, around
snag
half of the
in the
students
system.
are currently in China. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So sometimes they'll
yeah,
use a VPN and sometimes they don't, sort of thing. So
yeah,
I just find you have to be a
but,
little bit careful in interpreting IPs,
yes,
multiple IP
yes,
logins.
yes, indeed. But if they're sitting in our labs, then we can, tell with a certain probability that they're not sitting in China.
Yep.
And when they're especially when they're coming in with 5 or 6 different IP addresses at the same time. So this is tricky.
Yes.
But
yes,
there's a lot of places where you can say it remains at a suspicion level, but you cannot prove it.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Hunt's got a good point in terms of trying to lock down too strictly to IPs when students may need to change devices if one breaks. Yeah. And as you guys have found out, the extensive logging in these systems gives you the evidence you are looking for anyway. Whilst it might not prevent it, it allows us to detect it.
It's not a matter of blocking IPs, but using just one IP at a time. What we find is that there are students using several IPs at the same time. That's where it hurts, really.
What I'm really worried about is, I mean, it's bad enough if you hand over a question to somebody else to solve for you, and you get a cup of tea while they're doing this. But it's infinitely worse if you're getting 4 people who are working in parallel on 4 or 5 questions in your exam. And we've got some evidence that this seems to have been happening for some of our students.
Right. Yeah. Tim has got it at a time. So how can 4 different people from 4 different IPs be doing the same quiz instance? Wouldn't the quiz instance
they log in with the same login credentials, and they run it on 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever different browsers. And
would you get race conditions with a whole bunch of people all editing at the same time? I don't know. Sorry, we're getting a bit technical.
Unfortunately, you don't. You sometimes wish you did.
Well, I do question 1, you do question 2, Matt, right?
Yeah.
Ulrich does question number 3. That's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I would have thought in something like Moodle that would create different instances of the quiz attempt. You'd have multiple instances of quiz attempt happening. So anyway, that might be something to sorry, we're getting distracted on the topic. We are actually on the hour, so we'll understand that if people need to go, we're not shutting it down. So we welcome more people to ask questions and discuss. But we do understand that some people may have to leave. So any other questions? Yep, Tim Hunt is actually the developer of the Moodle quiz. So any questions you have of him is a great time to.
It's really great to have him here. I actually looked at Moodle /CodeRunner logs for the first time yesterday. The previous ones that we used were the Canvas logs that students use to actually access CodeRunner. But basically what happened is I looked at them and I realized that there is a problem in that the logs, that at least the ones that we were given, only have student names in them, but they don't have student IDs in them. And so especially with certain Chinese names, we've had instances in the past where we've had multiple people in the class that had the same name. And then not knowing who that particular student is, could potentially be a bit of a problem. So having a unique identifier in there would be helpful. The other thing is, and then I think, from Tim's perspective, I understand this. The question is, what does at a time mean? Basically, if you identify yourself afresh every time there's an HTTP request, but obviously you could have something like stand down periods where you basically say, okay, if the last request for a question or something like this, for viewing a question has come from a particular IP, then I would expect that if the next HTTP request comes in and it's for a question submission, I'd expect that to come from the same IP address, or else.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Tim has just noted for your benefit that if you can turn on user identity settings in Moodle, but yeah, if your
Okay,
system is not set up that way.
I'll pass on to the technician who handles that at our end. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Any other questions,
Tim,
folks? We know there's a lot of people going. That's okay. Yeah. Sorry, Mano, you want to say something?
we'll talk to you, Tim, later on about asking for some help about this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're certainly seeing the Moodle IDs, but we're not seeing seeing the student IDs, and the student IDs is really what we need.
Right. Yes. It depends if your Moodle accounts are capturing their student identifiers or not,
Yeah.
or something else. Anyway.
And just basically having having only one session at a time, would be a good thing. And also, if we could sort of see how many different sessions, students come up with, because, if you're having a 2-hour quiz or something like this, or a 1-hour quiz, and students literally came up changing their sessions, once a minute or once every 2 minutes, it'd be an issue. Yeah, but we'll email you, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Just seeing if there's any other questions in the chat. Janet did ask one earlier, although she's left now. How did you detect these cases? Not sure what you meant by that.
Oh, I think I was referring to those AI-generated cases. What I heard was there's currently quite a bit of debate about what to do with them, because our academic integrity policy says that you shall not copy from someone else. But here, this is copied from something else, right? So yeah, it seems to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, basically that should, well, it might be the wording in that says that it probably should be, it must be your own work. I mean, I thought that caveat would be.
Yeah.
Then again, if you're using a spell checker to correct your spelling, is that still your own work? Is it not your own work? And where does and then you've got the grammar checkers, and then the question comes up, where's the boundary between AI and that sort of thing? And
Yeah, fair enough.
A matter for debate somewhere else.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah. Grammarly, we do actually expect students to use Grammarly, but then if they're using infokit.com, why is it bad, right? Yeah, the lines are very thin.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the one solution that I see, and this is where Dividni sort of comes in to a certain extent also for us, is that we're actually contemplating, going back to invigilated exams and tests to a large extent. And one of the main stumbling blocks, and this is why I was mentioning this earlier, at the moment, is that we're actually literally running out of physical space to run a whole university set of invigilated exams with the growth in the student role that we've had. So being able to compress more students into a smaller space by removing the spacing between students with individualized exams, that is actually probably a way of addressing that problem to an extent.
Yeah, are you using remote invigilation by any chance in any of your exams?
No, not really. That was seen as a breach of students' privacy.
Okay, fair enough. Just as a side note, Macquarie ran probably about 14,000 online invigilated exams that were staffed by the university. So we didn't use an outsourcer. And that means that, all of that privacy concerns I think are a little bit more easy to handle because it's all run in-house. But that's a discussion for a different time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we shall close it down. Thank you very much, folks, for coming. Let me just mention about the session coming up next week. I did have a slide, but it's now disappeared. Next week will be on, next month on the 2nd of November. It'll be on student-centered feedback practices. That's a joint session with the Assessment and Higher Education Conference Group in the UK. And there'll be two speakers there. One will be about flipped feedback, a student-centered feedback approach. And the other one will be assessment versus the VLE, virtual learning environment / LMS. impact on student-centered approach to feedback. So 2 speakers coming up next month will be the final session for 2022. So hopefully we'll be able to see quite a bit of the audience back there then. So thanks very much, folks, for coming, and I will close off the recording.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody for attending.